Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Stuart and I'm going to talk about gravitational sacrifice. So what in the world does that mean? Well, firstly, imagine that there's a teenager back at home and this teenager is messing up the house. Maybe it was you, right? And when you were there, you threw your clothes on the floor, you had a nice party with some of your friends, and after they left, you didn't clean up after yourself. And when mom came home, she was horrified. And when she was horrified, she would start nagging at you and she would unfortunately have to clean up your mess. Now here's the thing, mom has had a hard day at work, and when she comes home, she's unlikely to enjoy the additional work that she has to put in order to set the house right. And yet she does it. Why? Because that is her nature. Her nature is that of sacrifice. However, as a young teenager, I don't think you gravitated toward her simply because she did that for you. So there's a difference between sacrifice and gravitational sacrifice, where one is just simply doing something in spite of the fact that you're overburdened. The second one is where when you do this, people will gravitate towards you simply because of the value it has created. So here's another story. There was a day where I shared a panel with another friend of mine. Now I like to call him my friend. And back then we had no clue who each other were. Right? We'd only known of each other by name. And one of the key things is that during that panel, both of us were relatively impressed with each other, and as a result, it opened the doorway to friendship. So we met up for coffee, and that was that. At first, I thought it was just a simple catch-up, knowing about his business, him knowing about my business. Subsequently, over a period of time, he stopped with the business facade. Now, it's very easy with the business facade to start talking about things that are superficial, right? Revenue models, business ideas, and so on. But once you get past the business and you get down to the personal layers, you start finding something else, areas where you really get to know somebody. So this is where I started to really get to know him. He wasn't just a very successful business person. He was also someone who had just started a family, and because of his relatively large size, he had a difficulty establishing rapport with his daughter. So this was something that was up my alley. I mean, I've always talked about networking. I've always talked about adding value. I'm a psychologist. So everything seemed to align. And as a result, I gave him some ideas in terms of why he could have been causing this fear in his daughter. And it didn't strike him that it was, wow, his issue. So as a result, he went back and he said, thank you very much. Let me correct that. And lo and behold, several months later, when we got back together for coffee, I asked him, hey, so how's your relationship with your daughter? And he says, we're now best buddies. Really warms my heart to hear that. Now, what actually happened was the gravitational sacrifice that pulled him closer to me, and of course he did want to work with me on several types of businesses, but I had to decline at that point of time. He was interested simply because I was able to offer him something that no one else could. Right? And at the same time, what I could offer, I could do it with ease. So I didn't expect to be paid, not like a coach or a consultant, but rather as a friend giving advice within my area of strength. Now, that level of sacrifice didn't require me to chop off my arm or a leg, but it was able to help the other person recognize my value. The kind of gravitational sacrifice that I'm talking about is what Mark Joyner calls a high-impact minimal effort scenario. What does this mean? It means that you bring your strengths to bear. And in so doing, what happens is you establish very strong and powerful networks. These networks that will be able to align with you in times of need, but at the same time, where you can contribute the most in order to maximize the sense of meaning you have in life. So what I'd like you to do is to think about sacrifice this way. You can choose to sacrifice, but the other person may not realize it is a sacrifice. And it doesn't make sense for you to go up to that person and say, hey, you see how much I've sacrificed for you. It doesn't seem to make sense. And that's one of the reasons why many couples and intimate relationships break apart, because one is expecting something from another. Instead, when you're giving a gravitational sacrifice, it is precisely that. In view of the nature of that sacrifice, people gravitate towards you naturally. Now, this is a fantastic way to draw friends together, build communities, establish leadership, initiate change, and there are so many other applications for gravitational sacrifice. However, it must bear in mind one thing. something called bearing the negative. What do I mean? So, mom bore the negative, right? So there is a higher likelihood that in the future, when you start reflecting and go, mom really sacrificed a lot for me, so you will want to reciprocate in her old age. However, there are situations where when you bear the negative, you are already heavily burdened. So I'd like you to go watch my videos on self-care. During distressing times, it's very hard to actually be able to hold up a sacrifice. But if you've already made a choice to hold on to that sacrifice, maybe it's all about shifting the mindset that you have about what is difficult and what isn't. After all, even though you've had a really busy day, let's say you're a student and you had to study for an examination, and mom was the one who used to always vacuum and mop the floor. This time, in spite of your busy academic schedule, you take on the mantle as housekeeper and tell mom, just take a rest. Today, I will vacuum the house. And she might be concerned, but you have to study for your exams. And you are going to say, precisely, it's because of this time that I'm choosing to do this, because I don't believe that such things are going to bog me down. Because in the future, there'll be even greater conflicts of interest that I'll have to choose and maybe even bear even heavier loads in the future. So grant me the honor of doing it now. The question now is, how do you do this? Well, I have a phrase for you. It's called NICE V.I.B.E. Needs, interests, concerns, expectations, values, identity, beliefs, emotions. Now these are what I would call a snapshot effect of being able to identify the personality of a person, how they're driven, what kind of characteristics they carry, what kind of traits they have that come to the fore. And of course, the invisible things that they're concerned about that you should address if you want to get them to come towards you, to magnetize them. So the most important aspect is getting to know people. Now, in difficult times, getting to know people is probably easier because everyone suffers. And when they're suffering, the need tends to come up more appropriately. So, for example, in an epidemic situation or a pandemic situation, when people are isolated and they cannot leave their house, I've seen people who actually take on the responsibility of buying food for them, taking care of their grocery needs and so on, and medical needs as well. And that's very, very heartwarming. It is a gravitational sacrifice. Now, without a gravitational sacrifice, sometimes it's just simply seen as a hidden agenda. You want to get to know someone simply because you want something out of the other person. So I don't recommend that you do that. In fact, by understanding NICE V.I.B.E., you are able to establish a stronger relationship through time. I'm not asking you to get to know the NICE V.I.B.E. immediately in one sitting in 5 minutes, but rather to be able to get to know people over a period of time, and in turn, you'll be able to influence them more easily when push comes to shove. Now, although this entire topic is about gravitational sacrifice, there are so many further applications for this in terms of, as I mentioned, community building, in terms of establishing partnerships, even intimate relationships. But we'll probably need to spend more time in other videos to explain that. So I hope this has been beneficial for you. If you've got questions regarding gravitational sacrifice, type in the comments below so that I'll be able to address them. Hey there! If you've not done so, I'd like you to click on the subscribe button and click on the notification bell icon so that you'll receive the latest updates from this channel. If you don't do that, you might actually miss a few of my videos, and unfortunately, YouTube won't show new channels to everyone. So please go ahead and do that so that we can actually reach out to even more people and fulfill our vision.